Hi, Adams. Happy Friday. I hope you're having a great day. I am here with chapter 11 of Beyond the Bright Sea. I had never written to anyone before, and I wasn't the one holding the pen now, but Miss Maggie told me this was my letter to compose. How will we know where to send it? I asked. The book in the library by Dr. Eastman. He wrote it in Louisiana, Carville, Louisiana. How many leper colonies can there be in just one town? She said. This will find him all right. The letter was mostly questions, which I asked while walking in circles around Miss Maggie's kitchen table as she sat there, writing them down. I felt about 10 feet tall. Mouse had followed me to Miss Maggie's, and she now shadowed me as I walked my laps, which made me feel taller still. These are my questions. What was the first baby's name, the one born right after the colony opened? Where did they send him? Who was his mother? Who was his father? Was there another baby named Morgan who is now buried on Penaquis by the same mother? How did Morgan die? Was there yet another baby that was sent away in a skiff? Miss Maggie paused at this one. If the doctor knew about such a thing, you can be sure he would have come looking for you, she said. You told me he never answered your letter, I said, when I was a baby and you wanted to know where I'd come from. That's true, he didn't. But maybe he'll answer you now. So she wrote down my last question, too, with a sigh. I can just imagine him reading this and wondering why we're asking such things. I read back over the questions she'd written down and added two more. Is the mother still alive? Is the father? My voice squeaked a little. Mouse gave me an odd look. She rubbed her jaw against my leg. Miss Maggie got up from the table and fetched a slice of bacon for Mouse, who threw it in the air and wrestled it to the ground before dragging it out into the sunshine, and a ginger snap for me. We sat quietly while I ate the snap as slowly as possible and let my thoughts settle. There were so many possibilities. I might have a mother and a father and a brother, or only two of these, or one, or none, and no way to know where to look next, or whether to look at all. The whole thing made my head hurt. I can't think of any more questions right now, I said. Nothing that the doctor can't answer. Nor can I, she said, handing me the pen. Sign at the bottom. I took the pen. What do I write? I asked. Your name, she said with a laugh. What, just Crow? Yes, she said, Crow. And nothing else? She shrugged. What else is there? But that was one of the things that might have come back by return post, another name, and suddenly I wasn't sure I wanted to dig any deeper than I already had. I spent the next week working hard. While Asha and I tended our garden, I imagined the letter riding the ferry to New Bedford. I pictured it on a truck, bound for Boston, while we mended our nets and chinked holes where winter had come through our walls. I had a harder time imagining the airplane that flew it south. I'd seen one or two high up over the islands and knew what they were, but I failed to understand how all that heavy machinery did not plunge to the ground, my little letter with it. After the first week, I began to go down on the ferry dock to wait for the mail each morning. I must have looked so hopeful and eager that the postmate, Mr. Johnson, acted less cranky than he usually did with me. When he came down to the dock to collect the daily mail from the ferry, he said with a brisk nod, I will see it gets to you straight away when it comes, and no delay whatsoever. But he kept his distance when he said it. And though I did believe that he would deliver the letter when it came, I still sat on the rocks each day and watched the ferry come in, hoping it had brought me a reply. Hoping, too, that it hadn't. Osh shook his head over the whole business. What you do is who you are, he said. I knew he was right, but I asked him anyway. But what if you were one thing and became another? He nodded. I was, he said. I did. So? So that's written in stone. The rest is in water. He was sitting in the shade of the house, painting a picture of storm clouds and a small boat beneath. I teased Mouse down to the beach with a string and watched her chase it in circles until she keeled over. Silly cat, I said as she came to her senses and rolled in the dry sand. If you've nothing to do, Osh called, you could gather some driftwood. That and many other chores besides. The birds kept planting weeds in our garden. Miss Maggie wanted fresh straw in her rabbit hutch, and I had yet to pick the blue mussels that we'd be steaming for our supper. As if he'd read my mind, Osh called, bring the mussels up and plenty of brine, and pull some spring onions too. but the ferry would be in soon, and I figured I'd start with that. The tide was mid-high, so I waded through the fast current and came out soaked on the other side, my clothes dripping nicely to cool the warm day. After every wet crossing, I would shake like a dog and wring out my clothes as best as I could, so they dried in ridges with white with salt. I didn't care. Osh didn't care. We were sea clean and sun dried, the two of us, and fine that way. Miss Maggie didn't approve. She made her own soap and insisted on giving me a bar from time to time to take the itch out. She was right. The sea did leave an itch when it dried, but the soap made me smell sweeter than I was, and Mouse liked me better salty. No letter for you, I'm afraid, Mr. Johnson said as he came down the dock, the mailbag slung over one shoulder. Maybe tomorrow. He made a detour around me and continued past. Well, if it doesn't come and I'm not here, where will you take it? Which brought him up short. If it's addressed to you, it's yours, he said slowly. But you have no proper address, Crow. I'll give it to Miss Maggie. She can give it to you. And that's what he did. Sometimes, when there was a need, another ferry came in the afternoon, and on that day, a second one did, bringing another bag of mail with a single letter in it for me. Crow! Miss Maggie called from atop a bass stand across from our island, while I picked mussels off the rocks below. I'm down here, I called back. I'm coming around. I clambered over the rocks to where I could see her, and she me. Your letter, she said, holding it aloft. I stood straight up. Did you open it? Of course not. Will you? Of course not, she said again, and headed back across the planks to firm ground. Well, I went up to meet her, my pail of mussels sloshing as I went. I sat next to her on a flat rock in the sun, far enough away so my wet clothes didn't weep onto hers. She held out the envelope. I could see that it said Crow and Cuttyhunk Island, Massachusetts on it, and 3 pretty stamps, red and blue stripes and purple circles with numbers in them. I didn't care if I ever got another letter. This one would be enough. Go ahead, I said. My hands are wet. You go ahead. Across the channel, I could see Osh in the garden pulling weeds. I kept my eyes on him as she opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. All right, so I want you to make a prediction. What do you think the doctor said in his letter? Was Crow the baby? Does he know anything about her? Does he know anything about the baby that was buried on the island? What do you think? I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. Goodbye, Adams.